All right, welcome back to another episode of Blown Coverage. It is conference championship week. And yeah, let's right off the bat, Caleb. I'm curious. We talked a little bit off air after our last episode about how maybe we're feeling about this week. How excited are you for the weekend in general?
If you're meaning like the debate right now about, or not necessarily debate, but just feelings towards conference championships, like they still matter, or how much they still matter. Last year, whenever Texas was in it with against Georgia, I mean, I was still really pumped for it. Um, I don't know, I get both sides, but personally, I feel like I still get excited about it. Like if my team were in it, I'm still excited. Like for instance, the Indiana Ohio State matchup. I'm really excited for that, to be honest with you. And honestly, I'm really excited for the Georgia Alabama game too. Um, I would say those are the two matchups I'm most excited for. I think those could be the best games. We'll see. I mean, there could be some unpredicted things that happen. I mean, it's college football, but what are
For
your thoughts
sure.
on this? And what are your most excited games?
That's the thing, right? So if we're going to these super conferences, it's going to be the SEC and Big Ten. So there's kind of like two big games. Not to say the ACC and these other conferences couldn't have, Big 12. I think the Big 12 game could be interesting. I think they're all interesting. It just feels like, I don't know, maybe it's just me. The only game that I'm really like, oh, I got to watch that is Ohio State, Indiana.
Hmm.
And we'll talk about that. I don't know. It just feels like with the playoffs, like how much is on the line, and we'll talk about that as we go through each game, I guess. But I can't lie to you. I just feel a little bit. I don't know. It feels a little bit dull to me, if I'm being honest. But that's just my opinion. I know not everyone would agree with that, and it depends on who you're rooting for. Obviously, Texas Tech doesn't feel that way, but I'm talking mostly from a neutral perspective, not as someone who's a fan of a team that's in the conference championship. So, okay, well,
I
let's just get right
definitely
into it.
agree that like if your team is playing in this game and they lose, I don't think they should be penalized for that. Just because what I mean, there's 12 teams in the playoff, and really and truly the one, two, three, four. I mean, for the 25% of the team, or excuse me, eight. So 66% of the teams will be in the conference championship. The other four won't. So I guess I guess it would depend. I mean, the caveat to that maybe is like if BYU gets blown out against Texas Tech, maybe again, maybe. But generally speaking, depending on the situation, I think like if your team is in the conference championship, they shouldn't necessarily get penalized if they lose. What's your thoughts on that? I guess.
Well, I generally agree. I think it's kind of a case by case basis. Like, obviously, that is the case in the SEC or Big Ten. Do I feel the same way about the ACC? If you have two teams that
Yeah,
were
yeah,
like
that's true
right
too.
on the edge of tension, that's kind of the thing. But I guess on that note, let's talk about the first game where that may matter, and that is BYU versus Texas Tech.
Hmm.
It's 11 a.m. ABC. Texas Tech is opened as a 12.5 point favorite. Obviously, these two have already faced, and Texas Tech pretty much handled them.
Hmm.
And I imagine BYU will be going into the week saying to themselves, we may need to win this game to make the playoffs. They might be right. I don't know what the committee is going to do, but I think it's safe to say, well, actually, it's not safe to say. If BYU can keep this close, I think the committee will not penalize them.
Right.
But
If
if
it's
they get
actually a
blown
competitive
out,
game, yeah.
right, right. So that's the thing. What are your general thoughts on this game, being that we've kind of already seen it? Go ahead.
I know. I'm kind of torn. Texas Tech, blew them out the first time they played, right? I'm torn between like, okay, can BYU compete with Texas Tech? I mean, they kind of got the underdog factor for sure now. Um, I'd probably err on the side of I think Texas Tech is just going to dominate them again. To be honest with you, um, I don't know. I do think BYU is a good team, and maybe from a mental perspective, maybe they can be a little bit more competitive in the first half. But I think ultimately Texas Tech pulls away with it.
I agree. The thing is, Texas Tech seems to be legitimately like they're not just like the best team in the Big 12. They seem legitimately like one of the better teams in the country.
Yeah,
Exactly where they are, I don't know, but they seem like probably top six, in terms of like overall, if you just compared all the teams, they're probably in that argument. So, you
yeah,
know, one thing about BYU that I've just got to give them credit for is they've been good now for the last 2 years. And the fact that they've been able to do that consistently, because a lot of these Big 12 schools, they kind of rise and fall, and it changes a lot year to year. And the job Sataki has done, this is a kind of another talking point. They tried to get Penn State tried to hire
yeah.
him, I guess,
Turn
this
it down.
week, and he chose to stay with BYU, which
That
is
says
pretty
something too.
interesting. Right, right. So yeah, just got to give a lot of credit to just BYU as a program for doing what they've done over the past couple of years, and don't forget their quarterback is a freshman quarterback.
I think he's a
So
true freshman. Yeah,
yeah, right, right. So watch out for them in the future. They're probably going to stick around a bit, but
probably
I
so.
will tell you, I will tell you, no matter what happens in this game, especially if Tech wins, I'm excited to see Tech versus elite competition. Like,
Me
how
too.
are they going to fare
Hmm.
versus like Oregon if they face them, or really anybody else other than BYU? And it's not a knock on BYU. It's just like, let's face it, the talent profile of these other schools that are in that top 12, other than like Virginia if they get in, or the group of five school. How will
For the most
Tech
part, they're pretty
fare
one
versus?
dimensional too. You know, offensively. Whereas,
Mhm.
let's say, like theoretic, like okay, well, Alabama's uh, for the most part a one dimensional team, but there's definitely a huge disparity in the talent level there between Alabama and BYU, right? So,
Right.
um, anyway, that's the only thing I would say with BYU. Now, if I think they could maybe win a game in the playoff, it just depends on who they match up with. Like maybe an OU by chance, maybe. I don't know. Just depends.
I don't know. I kind of think Texas Tech matches up pretty well with just about every school. Like,
So
there's no one that they
BYU with the
face that
OU.
they're going to face. Right, right. Oh, you're talking
Okay,
about BYU. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes, yes, yes.
but
Yeah,
yes,
oh,
Texas
right.
Tech.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah, Texas Tech. I think could match up with the majority of the teams. I think there'd be few teams I would say, okay, be on the lookout here. Like maybe Ohio State, Indiana. I'm almost on the verge of like saying maybe Notre Dame, Miami. And I mean, I would probably say Notre Dame would maybe be a lock in potentially. I'd be curious to really, that actually may be a good matchup because I'd be curious to see how Texas Tech's, I think their defense is still ranked in the top five run defense. I'd be curious to see how they'd be able to contain Notre Dame's running backs.
Right, agreed. I guess last thing on this game, and we mentioned this last time Texas Tech and BYU faced off, but this is kind of the key matchup. It is Tech's run defense versus BYU's ground game. And I just think like BYU, good luck. They seem to have, something that isn't talked about a lot though with BYU is that they can score. Like if you look at
Mhm.
their overall like points that they put up, they do put up points, but it's the way that they do it. It seems like they've gotten a little better passing the ball as the season's gone on, but if they can't run the ball, it's just hard to imagine them keeping this close with Tech, and
Mhm.
Tech's run defense is just elite. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of key matchup to watch. I think it'll be exactly like the last game in terms of we're going to know how this is going to go in the first quarter. If BYU is just stuffed immediately, Tech scores, stuffed immediately, Tech scores, well, then that's just kind of the game. My
Yeah.
prediction, I do think this will be a closer game than last time, but I think Tech kind of handles the game. So that's what I have
Yeah,
to say.
I would agree. If I had to bet, I'd probably, like I said a few minutes ago, maybe BYU just makes it more competitive in the first half, but then Tech ends up pulling away with it. Whereas the first game, it was pretty much just right out of the gate. Tech was just manhandling them basically. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the next game I want to go to is the game I think we will probably have the least to say about. So I kind of wanted to just get it done, but it is very relevant, and that is 7 p.m. It'll be on at the same time as Indiana Ohio State. But 7 p.m. the ACC championship, Duke versus number 17 Virginia. Virginia is a 3.5 point favorite. I've watched bits and pieces of both these teams. Virginia, maybe more so. And the one thing I will say about Virginia is they have a very good offense. And that works out because Duke has one of the worst defenses in the country. If you look at their stats, like they're like 115th in like every category. The problem is chaos theory says Duke wins this game because the ACC is
yeah,
just, it's been impossible to actually predict this year. And the thing is, it opens up some spots, but what it actually does, because you have to put in the fourth highest ranked conference champion, and that would probably bring JMU in the mix. And they have had a very impressive season, James Madison. The problem is, and we don't have to talk about this yet because I do want to focus just on this game, but now we're talking like, okay, so now we're going to get two group of five teams in there, and we're leaving out some of these other squads that I would say are more deserving, whether that be Miami, Vandy, Texas, whoever, take your pick. And that's the problem. And the ACC, I mean, they really have just fumbled the bag. So it is going to be interesting. It would make the committee have some interesting decisions. I'll let you say whatever you want to say on that. I guess my only thoughts for this game itself is exactly what I said. I think Duke, keep in mind how they kind of earned this spot. They earned it through like a five-way tiebreaker or whatever, and it
yeah,
just so happened they won that tiebreaker. I think Virginia should win this game, and I think they will put up a lot of points. And it'll be a bit of a playoff preview for Virginia and probably the last win of the season because there's kind of a gap between Virginia and whoever they're going to play. But that's all I've got for this.
yeah. I mean, I know for a while we were discussing Duke's quarterback being, you know, I wouldn't say like necessarily an underdog for anything by chance, but he's had a pretty decent year. 34 100 yards, 28 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So you could argue that these two teams, it's two offensive powered teams, I guess you could say. So maybe it's a shootout. I'll be going for Duke just because Miami's probably going to be in, and I mean, should two ACC teams be in there? I don't know. Probably not, but
Yeah,
that's really all I have to say.
yeah, agreed. Okay, so let's go to the next game at 3 p.m. ABC. Georgia has opened up as a 2.5 point favorite over Alabama. And, Georgia's been the favorite over Alabama, it seems like a few times now, and Alabama seems to figure out a way to win these games. I think
Mhm.
you would probably agree with me, even though Alabama has been impressive this year. They've kind of had their lulls, and we've talked about how they're one dimensional. It feels like Georgia is the better team, but you just don't know with these games. Like, let's face it, Alabama has just owned Georgia, and it's kind of like I don't know what matchup to point to other than I think Georgia can probably run the ball pretty well, but it's just like these do end up being usually great games. Like, the one's not going to blow the other one out. And yeah, I will say, me personally, and this goes back to just how I just feel about championship weekend this weekend. I have a little bit of fatigue with this game, and I think it's probably an unpopular opinion because it is like always a great game, but it's just
Yeah.
like I've seen it, what really is on the line. Like Georgia could miss out on a bye, but Alabama's not missing the playoffs, so I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts. But I'm sure it'll be a good game to see.
So earlier in the year, Alabama won 24-21. From my perspective, I think that was when, or that was before Georgia really found their offensive rhythm, because it was pretty much after that is when they found their offensive rhythm. And Alabama, I mean, for the most part, they have been pretty consistent, okay, and a really grueling schedule. So won't take anything against that. I just think which team, since that matchup has excelled more, I'd probably say Georgia. I think Kirby Smart is just the best coach in football, arguably, if not top one, number two. Situationally, I don't think there's going to be a better coach. Um, with offense pretty much being on the level it has been for the last month, I think it's going to be hard for Alabama's defense to contain them. And I think Kirby Smart's just going to have that defense ready for this game. So I think it's going to be a close game, but I think it's the opposite ending. I think Georgia's going to come out and win this.
I probably agree with you, and it is weird to think about it. But Alabama could be looking at a four-loss season. In fact, that is probably what is going to happen because
Well, if they
they're
lose, yes. Because I mean, can we see them win the championship? Probably not. Just because,
right.
and I hate to say that because they arguably have. Well, I mean, I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to look, but they probably have a top three like strength of schedule record or strength of schedule ranking in their
Yeah,
record. I mean, hey man, it speaks for itself. So I hate to say that, but yeah, they very well. What are they 9-3 right now? Or 9-2? Or wait, 10-2? I
10-2.
guess.
They're 10-2.
Yeah. So yeah, they could be 10-4. And I hate to say that because it's going to look like, oh wow, that's not a good year by Alabama standards, but that's a pretty good year considering
Yeah,
who they played in the gauntlet of a schedule they had. So
it really is. I know everyone's talked about it, and there's no need to beat a dead horse, but it still is just shocking they lost to Florida State. Just being how bad Florida State, because it's like, yeah, teams could put together like good games, but it's not like Florida State even went like 8-4, because we'd still be saying that if Florida State went 8-4. Florida State went 5-7, and they were very, very bad. So it really is just wild to me. And maybe it's a case study of, and I hate to say this because this is kind of like the Miami Notre Dame argument, and I don't think this completely applies to that, but I think it just shows the first game of the season has to be treated a little bit differently. Maybe, and not everyone would agree with that, but there's just something about that first game of the season where teams aren't who they are yet. I don't know.
I'm
Just
probably
something to
there
think
with
about.
that for the most part. I mean, it probably depend on the case, yes, but here's the thing: does Florida State have some like enough talent to be competitive? Yeah, and I mean, if you have all off season to prepare for that first game, you're
Right.
potentially could be systematically the most prepared you're ever for a game. Now the key is, can you be like that effective every game of the season? And we've seen what how Florida State handled that question, but I don't know. I mean, I could see that from both angles. Like I'd probably say like, yeah, I don't necessarily take the first game of the year, however win loss, with a grain of salt. You still have to look at it for sure. I mean, you still got to account for it, but
So here's sorry, but here's a question for you. If Alabama wins this game, should Alabama get a bye? So in other words, jump into the top four. Because let's face it, normally when the number 9 team beats the number 3 team, they probably would not just jump into the top four. But the
I'd probably
consequences
say
of not
so. Yes.
okay, so
Here's
you
my
would.
reasoning why. So number one, number or the Big Ten championship. I don't think either one of them will move.
Yeah.
Nor should, maybe, unless Ohio State or Indiana just beat the crap out of one or another. You know what I mean? But maybe that could happen. I have no idea about the Big Ten championship, to be honest with you. It's actually, I'm most intrigued about that. But my point is, I mean, I think Georgia is one of the best teams. I think they could put a run on whoever's money to win the championship. I think for Alabama to win tomorrow's game, or not tomorrow's game, this weekend's game, could you argue? I don't know. I
It's
mean, if
tough.
just Alabama wins this weekend, who's to say they aren't a top four team? They beat Georgia twice. Um, there's BYU, Miami, Notre Dame, Texas Tech, um,
Oregon.
yeah, Oregon, A&M. Could any of them do that? I don't know. I think it'd be pretty hard. I mean, I know it
Yeah,
sounds like a stretch because they'd be moving up 5 spots. I know that. But think about all the people that aren't playing in a championship game. You know,
yeah.
I guess that's the only thing. Like, I mean, listen, it sounds like a stretch, I know, but to me, it doesn't sound too crazy to have like move like for them to beat Georgia in the SEC championship. I think they would deserve a bye. I'll put it to you that way.
I agree. Look, it's obviously debatably the best conference, and if you don't think that, it's the second best conference.
Yeah.
So then, if Alabama were to beat them, to not have an SEC team represented in that top four,
By the way, I would say that the Big Ten, comparatively speaking, to the SEC, I still think the SEC is deeper than the Big Ten for sure.
well, I agree, but there is like a lot of debate about that.
Yeah.
As far as who has the better conference and just all that. I would agree with you though. But the point being, it just feels like the SEC has got to be represented there in the top four. But no matter what, the committee is going to have a tough time with whoever wins this game
Oh, for
because
sure.
how if Alabama loses, how far do you drop Bama? Like they're still going
Hmm.
to be in the playoffs. I don't think there's really any actual debate about that. So it's just like, well, so where are they exactly going to be seated? And then obviously, if they win, do they go into that top four? So that's going to be an interesting storyline to watch. But I'm sure, as always, it is going to be a great game. I guess quickly, what are your thoughts on? Or maybe you already said this. You expect Georgia to win this game, right?
Yeah. Well, I would say yes, but I think it's going to be close.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the line's 2.5, so I mean, I would
Yeah.
expect that too. I agree. I agree. It's hard to imagine Alabama beating Georgia twice in the same year, but
And
we'll
the only
see.
reason why I say that really and truly, and I'm not saying this necessarily as a bad thing because Alabama did well this year, just I feel like they've been the same team the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just have seen more improvement since the Alabama Georgia game from Georgia.
Yeah.
Offensively, defensively, I think they're just more of a complete football team back from that game, and maybe there is some to that same thing with Alabama. I just feel like Georgia's really grown pretty quickly.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so I agree with you. The most intriguing game is going to be number two Indiana versus number one Ohio State on Fox. Ohio State opens as a 4.5 point favorite. That line actually went to 6.5, and now it's back to 4.5. So people are expecting this to be a close game. I'm excited. I think it's fair to say, like, no one would really debate these are the two best teams in the country. Like, at least to this point, like they are the best two. And to me, this seems like destiny versus dynasty. You know, it's like what Indiana's been able to do is incredible. Everyone knows that. But then obviously Ohio State looks like one of the best teams of all time. And what's really cool about this when you compare the stats and all that is they faced similar competition. And I don't know if you got a chance to look at like where these teams rank in terms of like, all their individual stats. They're both like in all categories, like in the top 10 in like most of the categories, defense, offense, yards per play, points, all of that. So to me, like this is what the national championship used to be, right? Just the number one versus two team. And I don't think there'd be any debate this year on who number one and number two should be. So I'm
Mm.
excited for it. What are your thoughts?
Well, just to add some more layers to it, like I have no idea who's going to win this game. To be honest with you, like does Indiana just come out there and just go on offense and Ohio State stop that? Now they have the like arguably the best defense in the country overall, but has Ohio State really faced an offense like Indiana? Not really. So I think Indiana is going to really test Matt Patricia in that defense. And I mean, you could say the same thing for that Indiana offense. Have they faced an offense like Ohio State's? No. So I think there's maybe some questions that you could argue on both sides. Like, okay, man, let's see who's the best here. Because you're right. They're statistically they're both very good, right? Um, I do think that it's a pretty impressive that Ohio State went out and handled business the way they did against Michigan. So I think that's a pretty good like pre-test before Indiana. Just because I don't know, if, I forgot off the top of my head if Indiana played anybody last week or not. But if they did, it wasn't anybody like was
The
anybody
last
like
week,
Michigan.
Purdue,
Yeah,
Purdue.
yeah. Indiana. I mean, Michigan, Purdue. Yeah, I don't know. So Ohio State's got talent all over the field on both offense and defense. So does Indiana too. And listen, two Heisman candidates, right?
Right.
So I don't know. It'll be a very intriguing game. I have no idea where to go with this game.
Agreed. So this is the battle of the Heisman frontrunners, which is pretty
Yeah,
cool to see. I don't know how often you get that, so that'll be cool. Also, so the thing is about this Ohio State defense is people are talking about it like, and I'm not saying I disagree. I don't disagree at all, but it's not only a great defense. It's not only the number one defense in terms of points allowed, but it might be one of the best defenses of all time, like a top five defense of all time.
oh yeah,
Now, we'll really get to see that in the playoffs because, like you've said, like have they faced the offenses? Hard to say, but they can avoid everybody in the playoffs. And Indiana is, in terms of points, the second best offense in the country. So
right.
that's
So it's
going to
definitely a good
be
test for him.
right, right. So I'm curious to see. Hopefully, this is a close game, and this isn't going to be like Ohio State really is just so much better than everyone. They blow them out. I don't see that happening.
Yeah,
But I want to see if, because so far Ohio State has pretty much looked flawless. And you talked about with Georgia how Georgia seems to be ascending. I would say the same with Ohio State. Because at first you could say, well, their offense was maybe struggling a bit. Who is this Julian Saying guy? And second half of the season, now he's like the favorite to win the Heisman, or, at worst, like the second favorite. So, they're ascending. Can Indiana expose any flaws in this Ohio State team on either side of the ball? And even if they lose, are they able to give other teams kind of ideas on how they might beat Ohio State? Or is it just going to be Ohio State is that much better than everybody? I do think this will be a close game. Don't forget the other side of the ball. Indiana has an elite defense. And I know this horse has been beat to death, but just amazing how far Indiana has come. Obviously, they were good last year, but they're not good this year. They are legitimately the second best team in the country. Like they are just that good. So I agree with you. I don't know where to go with this game. I'm really looking forward to it. If I had to guess, though, I think this could come down to the fact that Ohio State just has more talent and
they
Indiana hasn't
do.
quite faced a team like this. So I think that's just going to give Ohio State the edge.
And I would agree with you. But as far as a quarterback standpoint goes, I think I would give the edge to Mendoza. I think
Yeah.
senior versus basically, I think Sayan's like maybe a redshirt sophomore or something like that, but this is his first year starting versus Mendoza's at least 3 year. I don't know if he's been a 4 year starter. So I do think that experience as far as quarterback goes. And here's the deal. I mean, has Julian Sayin really been pressed this year to really step up and put it on his shoulders to lead his team? Not yet. I think the closest game was against Texas, but even in that game, he really didn't have to do too much to keep his team ahead. So it'd be very interesting to see, like, if Indiana got out at like 10 points ahead at some point, and it really puts pressure on saying, can he deliver? That's a good question. And if he can, I mean, hey, who's to say he could not be the? Who's to say he shouldn't be the Heisman at that point? I mean, obviously, I guess it would depend on the playoffs, but
Right.
um,
Well, what he
as
has
far as
going for him
like,
is just receivers. I mean, Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith.
yeah,
I mean,
right, exactly. Um, and the most important position in football, quarterback. But man, Ohio State has just freaking players everywhere, elite players. Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate. The running backs are really good. Trying to think, I forgot the other player that I really kind of have watched and I'm like, well, wow, this guy's good. But anyway, they have talent all over the field, man. So I typically would favor the team that has the better quarterback matchup, but Ohio State, there's just talent everywhere, dude.
right. Okay. Well, we're 30 minutes in, and we kind of covered, I think, everything we want to talk about in terms of the games themselves. I
Yeah.
think we both agree the one we're looking forward to most is Ohio State, Indiana. And yeah, in terms of the games, that's all I had to talk about. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of, coaching, rankings, anything that comes to mind?
Mm,
I'll briefly go, and then if you don't have anything, that's fine. Just a quick little quibble. A&M should not be the seventh team. They should be the sixth team, and that's really going to suck for A&M because they are probably. We'll have to see the way it works out, but there's a good chance you have to face Notre Dame. And I've been saying for a while, the last team I want to face is Notre Dame. Like it literally the last team in terms of teams that are possible. It's them. And it's BS. Now, I am curious to see what the committee does. It feels like the committee is going to be in a hard spot, and they're going to end up putting Miami over Notre Dame. And I will just say, as an A&M fan, I will take that. But I just quickly. So here's a talking point: just out of conference games. We've talked about it with Texas, but you could say the same thing with A&M. So A&M has one loss, and the other one-loss teams are Ole Miss and Oregon and Texas Tech. I'm okay with Texas Tech and Oregon being above them. But at the end of the day, A&M scheduled Notre Dame and won. What's the point in scheduling Notre Dame if we're going to be behind Ole Miss, which doesn't have that win? Like we could have just scheduled Sam Houston State. We'd still be 11-1, and we would still be ranked exactly where we are. So do we not get extra credit for scheduling Notre Dame and winning that game? And you see that like with other examples too. And it does feel like what the committee is in danger of is not valuing these out of conference games enough.
well, exactly. And that's what I was saying with the Texas team. And Steve Sarkisian said this, you're basically valuing a pretty record over who that team plays. It's very dangerous because really it's just basically telling the coaches as soon as you can, schedule the easy games, right? And honestly,
Yep.
between the two of you, you'll have pretty comparable like schedule, like probably strength of schedule rankings, like Ole Miss and you guys. I mean, maybe a slight edge to A&M just because of Notre Dame and Texas game, and I think there's like Missouri. Okay, whereas
I
Ole Miss
still say LSU.
do what?
I still say LSU. I think in context of when that game was at LSU, LSU fighting for it all, I get it. I
It,
get it.
it's yeah. I mean, I get it. Maybe from a storyline perspective, I guess. I mean,
I'm not saying storyline. I'm saying just in terms of
no,
LSU at
no.
the end
I'm
of
just
the day.
saying, like maybe from a mental perspective. I don't know. They're kind of mid. I mean, but I think you guys are better all around team than Ole Miss, though. I mean, for sure. Like Ole Miss is definitely like offensively minded, and the question is, are they going to get counted? Are they going to now their offensive coordinator is going
Exactly.
to call
I
plays?
think that's one more
That's
reason to move them down. They said that they were going to take that step into consideration.
right.
So I
But
mean, that's a
well,
big.
here's the deal. I know Lane Kiffin's not there, but the offensive coordinator will be there, who I'm assuming probably
Yeah,
the majority of the time he had called plays, and maybe Lane put in his own sprinkles here and there. But I mean, overall, should Ole Miss be over you guys? Probably not. I don't think so. I don't think so. Um, I'm trying to think. Who's the other team you said? Or here, let me just look. I guess.
It was just those two, and then we talked a little bit about Texas. Although I think Texas is a little bit different. I think it's an interesting
I mean,
argument.
trust me. I mean, it is. It is different. Don't get me wrong. It just. I mean, as like I said, man, it's a hard decision. I think we have a pretty good resume. It's just if we didn't play, I think if we didn't play Mississippi State or Mississippi State and Kentucky close, I think we'd be in. If we just beat
Right.
them, even with that Florida loss. But we didn't do that. We didn't do that. It's fine. And honestly, as a Texas fan, I'm still happy with how this season ended out. Because frankly, first year quarterback, we had to replace practically almost our whole offense. I think just people had really unrealistic expectations. Why are you smirking?
Just starting it again for next year. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But I mean, we'll see.
No,
I agree
I'm
with
not
you.
going to sit there and
I
say
agree.
I'm not going to sit. I'm not sitting there saying like, "Hey, watch out for us to be in the championship." Not saying that, but with what we had to do this year and what we've accomplished, and it's with the schedule we had, I mean, I do think that is saying something. So regardless if we
Yeah.
get in or out, we should be proud of this year. And yes, I do think there's an argument for. Here's the deal. I would say, I think if I'm not mistaken, Notre Dame, they play three top 25 teams. They've won one, lost two. Okay. There's an argument against Notre Dame. Miami, I think they won one and maybe lost one or something like that, being in the ACC. I still think Miami. I think if Miami were to play Texas, maybe Miami would win. But the thing with Miami is like, what Carson Beck are you going to get out of the game? Notre Dame, I do think they have improved. However, you have to ask about like, okay, is it just because they look so good because of the talent that they've played? I don't know. Not to say that they would lose to Texas. I don't know if we could beat Notre Dame. I mean, I think it'd be an interesting game. It's just going to be a hard year. I mean, every year's hard, right? Actually, honestly, I think this year is harder than last year. What would you say to that as far as the playoff
Yeah.
debate?
I don't think it gets much tougher than this
Yeah.
year.
I mean, there's
Like it
just
is.
so many teams on the fringe of who gets in and who doesn't. And because, I mean, and you got Vandy right behind Texas too, you know.
Yeah.
And what pisses me off, honestly, man, is just like the group of five person and the ACC team.
Yep.
You could put both. And I know it would. I mean, it would really show biasm. But you could put and potentially to BYU. I guess if they got railed by Texas Tech, but whatever. You could have both Texas, Vanderbilt, and 15's Utah. Okay,
Yeah. They're out.
do it.
Yeah, but they're out. I don't
Well,
think anyone.
yeah, but I'm just saying having Texas and Vanderbilt in there would be better for the playoffs, or they'd be better games versus the Group of Five person and the ACC champion.
I agree, and I don't think enough people are talking about that actually as like a problem. Maybe it'll get sorted out, but I am curious to see what they're going to do with the format going forward because this does feel a little untenable. Like there's just so many people
Well, for
complaining.
sure. Because it
Yeah,
seems like what it's coming down to is like they're kind of putting a cap on how many teams from each conference can be in there, almost in a sense.
yeah,
And
yep,
it's just like if a group of five person is maybe like a one loss team, like against like a semi decent team or whatever, fine, whatever, or undefeated, sure, they should have a shot. ACC, I mean, obviously a little bit more lenient depending on if the ACC is like really good. I mean, of course, that's a slippery slope because then you'll look at every conference. Or are they good or are they not good? That's a slippery slope just because everyone's opinions. But and ACC does have strong years, or stronger years. They have potential. I mean, they've got pretty good teams in there. But this was just a weak year for the ACC, frankly. So anyway,
Yeah, no, I think well said, and yeah, I don't really see any great solutions coming. So I think this will just be something everyone has to deal with every year.
hopefully next year. I mean, there's last year the thing that I remember was South Carolina getting left out, but that was like the really the only team I felt like dang they should have been in probably. This year it's like you got 3 to 4,
Right, right.
depending on what
Would
happens
you
this weekend. But
would you support Texas canceling the Michigan series that's taking place in 2 years, the home and home?
wow, honestly, I didn't realize that
That was talked about today on Reddit, and basically
if
the
we played them
meme
last
was
year, huh?
the oh is it, maybe I'm getting a team confused.
I think
I
we've
thought
only
it was,
played them one year
maybe
though.
I'm thinking of Notre Dame. I,
Okay,
I I don't know. I'll have to check, but let's just say that it's one of those two, and that you have to face those two. The meme was that Steve Sarkisian was, threatening to, not play the out
yeah,
of conference
right,
game.
yeah.
Like, yeah, you
Uh-huh.
don't have the balls to actually do that. But then a Texas fan was saying in the comments is like, well, honestly, like as a Texas fan, I'd support it because we have to play 9 SEC games
Yeah,
anyway.
right, exactly. I mean, it's not like we would have an easy schedule to begin with, right? So, and I mean, especially with this treatment, like, you know, yes, I am a Texas fan, but it's kind of like, why the hell would you want to schedule that for your team?
Yeah, agreed.
I
I'm
mean,
gonna.
listen, if we lost to like, if we got blown out by said team or whatever, fine. Okay, sure, get penalized for that. Okay. And even if we lose, like, yes, I do get a little penalization, but I don't know. To be honest with you, like, yes, I would probably would say, yeah, just if you can back out, do it. You know?
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, and I would have to say too, I think it's unfair to say that you just can't lose to unranked teams. Obviously, it's not ideal. And that's why I say in Texas's case, like it
Yeah.
is a little bit different because they didn't just lose to an unranked team. They looked bad in those games after too against bad teams and they won, but whatever. But my thing is like in a way, losing to Florida at Florida isn't as bad as the way they actually won the game against Kentucky and Mississippi State. The loss to Florida was actually the least bad because, like, if you look at the whole season, Florida had a bad year. If you look at where they were at the time Texas faced Florida, Florida was in a must win situation. They were at home. Texas hadn't, I think, been on the road yet other than Ohio State. you know, it's like Florida has a ton of talent. Some people thought they were going to be a top 10 team this year. It didn't work out for them. Billy Napier, they still had the coaching structure, and then Billy Napier was fired shortly after that. So they didn't have the coaching structure anymore. So I don't know. I actually think
Which Florida
just
has had a
saying, well, they
health
lost to
problem
an
too.
unranked team.
Some of those offensive players, some of their offensive studs kind of had some health issues too this year. I'm not going to say that's an excuse, but maybe their season could have been a little different if everybody had stayed healthy. But I mean, that's every team, an argument for every team, right? I'd probably say the worst game is probably that Kentucky game, like you're saying, just because of how adept everything looked. Like our defense was fine, it was good. Um, but yeah, that Kentucky game, because when we played Florida, everything that you said yes, but our offense was still trying to figure it out. So honestly, it's kind of a shocker that we didn't lose that game by more because I think it was like what 20-29 or 21-29, something like that. But anyway,
Well, the thing
Mississippi
is, you guys
State.
really did lose the game by more. Remember that Florida kind of controlled the game, and then it was like a late comeback type thing.
Well, no, I mean, don't get me
But yeah.
wrong. They did control. They did control the game. I wasn't saying like, oh, we barely lost. I'm not saying that. I'm just thinking about it at the time where offense was. I'm kind of surprised we only lost by 9 points or 8 points, whatever it was. And really and truly, I don't want to like really knock us too far for the Mississippi State game, just because I know the record says otherwise, but they really did play close. it's kind of almost the same scenario as Arkansas in a sense. But I mean, the first half looked horrible, yes, but
Right. I mean, that's the thing. That's the quickly because I don't want to get too lost in Texas's schedule. But
yeah.
yeah, in 2 years you guys do face Michigan, and here's the thing: I'm looking at y'all's schedule in 2 years. You guys host Michigan. And we don't know what type of team Michigan's going to be, but they could be good, and it's a power program. You guys
Well,
have at hang on. You guys have at Alabama that year. You host Georgia. You have the Cotton Bowl. So obviously not Cotton Bowl, but it's at the Cotton Bowl. You have OU, and that game's always going to be close. And you have A&M. You host A&M. You don't know how those schools are going to be, and then you just have like the rest of the SEC schedule where you never know if Auburn's going to be good. You have Vandy at South Carolina, at Arkansas, which I know is a big game for you guys. So right away, like, why would you guys play Michigan? You guys have Bama and Georgia in the same year, and A&M's going to be
yeah.
the top three team in the country by then. So it's gonna be like a pretty wild season. 2027, and I imagine your schedule next year is also tough. So yeah, I don't know why you guys would keep Michigan, honestly.
Well, I don't know if we can back out from it being this close, right? I
Why
don't know how
not?
that works.
I bet you could do something. I mean,
Well,
but I'm
I
looking at
mean,
that, and that would mean like Texas would have to. I mean, you guys would have to be really good to go 10-2 on that schedule.
well, here's the deal, and that almost sets it up for the same situation as this year, right? I mean, right now those are you said Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, A&M, and probably let's just say another random person on that schedule, and it
Right?
could be
Auburn at
even two.
Arkansas.
So
Oh, you
you're looking at 4 to 5 really good schools. Okay, um, I mean it's hard to say, but pretty similar to like this year's schedule, and like who's to say what will come out, but not how many teams. I mean, I know that there's going to be some other SEC schools that probably have a very similar schedule and see how they fare out, to kind of determine like the validity to the wins and losses or whatever. But yeah, frankly, it's kind of stupid.
Yep.
It's
So that
better
is
for the
something that's going to
sport.
be. It is. It is better for the sport. I
It's
agree.
better
It
for the
is something they're
sport,
going
but
to discuss.
if you're not going to get grace for that, then why do it?
Yep. Agreed. Okay. Well, we talked a lot about that. That was a fun little conversation, I guess. But that's pretty much all I have. And yeah, are you ready to wrap it up, or do you got anything else?
I think that was it. I was trying to think if there were any more coaching changes or anything like that, but well,
I
I
want to say
saw
somebody else
Auburn's
signed
keeping
an
the
extension. But I forget.
do what?
I want to say somebody else signed an extension besides Sataki.
Oh,
It was.
I was about to say Jerry Maguire.
Oh, oh, yeah, that's actually that is who I was going to say. But so he signed an extension, and that's all I know of, honestly.
I didn't
So
see the details on it for how long and how much or whatever, but him and Auburn's keeping their defensive coordinator, which is good. Um, I think that was really it. I mean, I could be missing something, but anyway,
okay,
that's we're
all
already
right.
at the end of the football season, I guess. But
I know, very sad, but we still have playoffs, and that'll be
yeah, we still
exciting.
got another month, roughly.
Agreed. All right. Well, this has been another episode of Blown Coverage, and I'll talk to you next week.
All right.